How do you determine whether or not you are too big or too heavy to be riding your horse? This week earlier is the episode we're talking about determining kind of weight and what goes onto a horse when you're riding them or packing them in the backcountry. Similar thing. How have you maybe gone up to a client in the past when you've worked with them in terms of gating or just their horse behavior in general, and you've identified that this person might be a little too heavy, the horse might be a little too small. What are some of the repercussions for the horse, and what are some of the ways you go about identifying that? What's a way to mitigate that as the rider? All the things that could potentially come with that. How do you address that?
Well, there's a lot to that. That's
Yeah.
that's actually a pretty complicated thing for a simple solution.
Yeah.
But it's diagnosing that and figuring out, okay, what's going on here? Why? Obviously, you look at somebody and you look at their horse and you go, it's a pretty large person, and that's a pretty small horse. And small horses can be tough. I mean, don't ever underestimate a small horse. They can do a lot of work. Even sometimes they're tougher than the larger horses, or can actually do more, pound for pound. But yeah, I've had that come up actually. You can see a horse as they're moving, they're not quite moving their hind end back. They're not collected in the hind end. Fact is, they're uncollected, uh, and it's because of where that person is sitting. And even a person that's not overly heavy can cause a horse to go out of collection, or cause some ventral flexion of that horse's back, and make those hind legs not collect like they should. So you can do that. Not being overweight is just where you set. So that's one of the issues too. But you can have somebody who's reasonably heavy, but if they're fitting that horse correctly, meaning they're up forward on them, they're sitting over their shoulders where they should, and the horse has not got a long back, an overly long back, they can balance themselves and they can work that out and make sure that that horse is actually moving easily and like they should. So when that all does break down, you say, okay, you got to be honest with people. Look, when somebody's overweight, you think they don't know that? I mean, I'm packing a few extra pounds than I should right now, and I know it. I feel it. So, I mean, you don't have to be mean about it and say, look, you're large. This horse is a little bit smaller. And often it's like, well, I have to have a smaller horse or I can't get on. Life Alert won't help you up to get on a horse. They'll help you off the ground, but they won't pick
Yeah.
you up further than that. So, you might use a stool or an aid, but if you get on a horse because you can, and then you're still not riding it correctly, what have you done? You've still got the same problem.
Well, and
So,
to go back to earlier this week when we talked about the weight issue, do you use that as kind of an analogy too? Like, hey, I'm looking at your horse, they roughly weigh this much. I would assess, based off of what you should do to make sure to take care of their back, their conformation, all that, all the stuff. This is what they should be packing. I'm not going to ask you to give me your number, but if you're over that, you might want to consider, and is that kind of how you go into that or?
well, yeah, you do in a way, but you also got to look at it this way: a well-balanced pack load that cannot adjust itself or help the horse sometimes is better balanced and easier
Yeah.
on the horse than someone who is sitting on a horse that can do and refuses to, or doesn't know how to balance themselves and help the horse.
Right.
So that's a huge disconnect for somebody. But coaching them along to get how to get themselves up and forward on their horse, helping that horse out, feeling what that horse is going to do. There's so many people that ride their horse and they have no idea what's going on underneath them. They're just along for the ride and they think they're doing a great job, and their horse is doing what they should. You take a look at myself, for instance. If I'm right now, I'm about 235, 240 pounds. I'm overweight. I need to drop about, well, I'd like to be down about 215. I need to drop about 30 pounds. I feel better. The horse certainly feels 30 pounds. I can tell you
Hmm.
that, it's what would you feel like if you had 20% of your weight on you? How would you do?
Right.
So you add your saddle weight in there, and if it's a well-fitting saddle or a properly fitting saddle, and you're riding properly, I think we talked about being able to overload your horse a little bit and go over that 20% of their total body weight. You can do that. You're not doing it every day or shouldn't do it every day, but you can do that. And as long as they're not working them too hard, you can get away with it. Uh, Making that connection with somebody and say, look, okay, what's your horse weigh? Some people don't even know. Say, well, you get an eyeball for it. You can actually use some tape measures and you can figure out a weight or go weigh them
Yeah.
and figure what they need to do optimally. What is my weight? How can I lighten that? How can I affect that horse better? And those are all some of the things you talk about when you do it. And you know, when you break that news to them, say, hey, you're a little chubby. You know, it's not the way you're doing it. Say, look, your weight is a little bit heavier than what this horse can pack or should pack uh, all the time. You can get away with that, and you talk about and what you need to do to correct that as much as you can, short of losing weight. And there are some folks that they struggle with weight, always have their whole life, or they got thyroid issues are a big deal. It affects people's weight. There's all kinds of things that affect people's weight. So whether they can do anything about it or not, so you work around those things. And there are some people that are too large to actually ride a horse. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, I know some guys that are, they're 6'8", and these guys are 325 pounds, and it's not fat. They're just large people, large men, especially. And that's a lot of weight to put on a horse every day. It takes a large horse to pack that, but by the same token, that weight, even on a large horse, the larger the horse that is, the bigger back, the longer back, can they take that? What does it take to get a 325-pound and figure a 40-pound saddle? You're 365. What is that horse now going to have to weigh in order to be optimal? Well, you're looking, you double that up, you're looking at 1,600-pound horse or 1,700-pound horse or so. That's a lot of horse.
Well, and
You're
because of
talking
that, have you
draft horse
ever
at that time.
have you ever suggested potentially telling them like, hey, might want to look at getting into a percheron, something that's kind of like a smaller draft type animal so that it can support their weight. If they're that, for example, you're saying like a Viking, like
Right.
320-pound just beast of a man that
Right.
wants to ride horses. He's in good shape and stuff, but he
Yeah.
knows he's gonna hurt his horse. Have you ever kind of pointed in that direction?
Well, and I have talked with people, and I've had people show up with light draft horses. They bred down a little bit. The problem with the draft horses, depending on the barrel of them, your legs are spread apart like you're a wishbone.
Yeah, I
At
was gonna
some
say you're
point,
doing
it's
the
not that
splits.
comfortable. Yeah, either. So a light draft horse that is conducive to being ridden. I think you trained one. It was a light
Mhm.
draft one time, and
Parisian.
it was a Frisian.
Even
Uh,
at 2 years old, I still felt like I was riding a 8 or 9 year old horse that
right.
we're used to, the
Yeah,
usual type. Yeah.
but he wasn't going to get the size of a Clydesdale or
No,
a Shire or Percheron or something like that either. Belgian horse. I mean, he wasn't going to get there. So that's kind of it is an option, and I've have suggested that. And I've had people show up with draft crosses like a Belgian cross, and at that point the horse was too big. The ego is what was riding the horse
mm,
at that point. To be quite honest and blunt about it, guy was fine riding something that was just a larger boned horse, but
sure.
his ego was about 400 pound. Well,
Well, that's all right. The only last thing I'd say is I don't know, more or less, if these people have not identified it themselves, how is it as a horse community or a equine community we can kind of we have addressed as a nation obesity is an issue within our country, right? Like that's kind of an elephant in the room, so to speak, with when it comes to our health as the United States
mm-hmm.
and anybody similar to us as a Western nation, we have this issue. Um, how can we as maybe a community kind of get people to be more self aware of this and potentially diagnose it without making it awkward for anybody and still being able to go out and enjoy themselves and take care of the animal to the best of their ability while having fun.
Well, I think it just boils down to their priorities. I mean,
Sure.
in we're filming this 2023, the end of it.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that we haven't had a lot of emphasis on our health in media, news, going to the doctors way they when they see somebody from the time they're a little kid to an adult, or even if they're an older adult, they're probably seeing a doctor a little more often than they did 30 years ago. that information's out there. It has been
Hmm.
out there. Everybody knows it. They know a lot of what they need to do. And you got an internet now that has some very good, credible sources that you can go to and look at. It all boils down to discipline. Do you have the discipline to really do that? If you're really concerned about your horse, are you going to adjust yourself so that they're not burdened or being painful or it gets hard? Because as they age too, it gets harder.
Right.
So, do you have the discipline to do that? Do you really want to do that, or is that animal just basically a tool for you to, enjoy, and you're not considering them and what it does to them? So, I think there's no excuse. Honestly, it's a matter about, do you really want to put in the work to do it? And hey, here I am sitting here as well, thinking every day it's the end of 2023, it's Christmas time, and there's a lot of fun, good stuff to eat, and I've been indulging.
Hmm.
So I got to stop that. I got to quit it. I got to start moving a little bit more, and put a little bit more effort into it. And as I have aged, in my 20s, I could be out of shape in a week, and I don't think I was ever out of shape in my 20s. But a couple of weeks into my 30s, you can get back in shape. Now that I'm a little 60 plus, that other decade, it takes a little bit more, and I've used my body pretty hard. So there's pieces and parts that don't want to work like the other parts do. And so it takes effort. And it's whether you're young or old, it takes effort and discipline to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to end it. So that's our subject on if you're too large or not for your own horse. So with that, we'll take that conversation and put it out to pasture.